Hey guys, Tammy here, and in this video, I'm going to give you 3 steps to anxiety-free communication. When you're communicating with a narcissist or a high conflict person on the other side, I find for most clients that this day-to-day communication can be one of the most stressful parts of the entire situation. I mean, let's be real, being in court and going through all that is really, really stressful. But ironically, the communication is the one thing that carries through the whole thing, right? Whether you're in court, whether you're not, whatever, you're still having to manage communicating with your co-parent. And when that just becomes a daily stressor, it tends to interfere with our parenting, with our working, with our functioning, with everything. And I find that, the anxiety that my clients have, this is one of the number one sources of it. Let me just remind you, if you like this content and you find it helpful, don't forget to hit like on the video. Also, subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And always feel free to share this information on social media. A lot of people need help around these types of issues. All right. So when we talk about communication, there's always some key things that we do. And, I know there's a lot of methods. I always talk about gray rock and all the different things that are out there. And I think a lot of those can be helpful, but applying, a list of things to your own situation can be challenging in a lot of ways. And even once you're applying certain steps, doesn't necessarily help to decrease the emotions around it. One of the things that we have to understand in applying, whatever techniques that you're using is that these are meant to give you control back of the situation. And I think that that's a big part of it. Is a lot of times there's even though we're being, maybe we're gray rocking or maybe you're aware of Bill Eddy's BIF response, which is brief, informative, firm, and friendly. A lot of times, even though we're doing those types of things, there are some other little factors that creep in that cause the anxieties to still be perpetuating. And one of the things that I find is sort of the timing of response, which I think is missed a lot in a BIF or a gray rock type of response. What happens a lot of times is we get the little notice that we've got a message, or we get the text or the email or whatever, the notice from the parenting app, whatever you're using, that anxiety starts to build, right? It goes up. And so we're like, oh my gosh, I've got to read this. And then we read it because we have fear about what it says. And then we're like, oh my goodness, I've got to respond to this because here's the thing, that's going on. And I either want to respond to it right away so I can kind of like get it off my plate because I'm trying to get rid of that anxiety, or I'm scared. I have fear around what they're saying in the message. So I feel compelled to respond to it. In any of those scenarios, that response time is being dictated by that other person, because what's happening is you're getting the message, you're getting the notice, then that's triggering you to need to respond. And then you read the message, and depending on what the message says and the fear that triggers, then you're responding again based on that. So it's really the control of that other person that's causing that. And even if your responses are brief, informative, firm, friendly, all those things, if you're still adhering to your timing of responses based on the other person, you're still being controlled by that. And that's still going to create anxiety for you. So one of the first things that I have clients do is establish a time each day that you're going to look at messages. For some people, that's first thing in the morning. For some people, it's last thing at night. For some people, it's over their lunch break. Like whatever works for you in your schedule, so that you're not being emotionally pulled in different directions. And honestly, I even tell people to turn notices off a lot of times, because it's the only thing it's going to do is trigger you. Now, I know sometimes we want them on in case there's an emergency or whatever, but I always tell people okay, look, if there's an emergency, that person's probably going to call you or do something, unless they're restricted in some way because of a protective order or restraining order or something like that. But if there's an emergency and the kid's taken to the hospital or some such thing, they're probably going to call you or do something. They're probably not going to go through the app, okay, if it's really, truly an emergency. And look, even if it's like an urgent thing, like, oh, the child's running a fever, took them to the doctor, whatever, again, not the timing of that isn't really going to change anything, okay? So you have to understand that allowing them to dictate when you respond to something is a form of giving up that control that's going to manifest as anxiety for you. So that's the first step in taking back that power, is just, if you have the ability to resist opening it or looking at it or whatever, even if that notice comes through, then that's okay. But if you can't do that, and I would say vast majority of people can't, then what I have people do is turn off the notices and decide on a time of day that you're going to check the messages. And look, maybe when you don't have your kids, maybe you decide you're going to check it twice a day then, right? But still, you're somewhat feeding into some anxiety because you're looking at things based on, oh my goodness, I'm afraid something's going to happen to one of the kids, right? Not that things don't happen in life, they do. But again, if it was really life altering, they would call you. And honestly, the kids are one of the main things that a narcissistic person will use to try to manipulate you. So they will send that message with the timing that they know that it's going to make you think that there's a problem. And I don't think I've had a situation yet that I can recall where somebody didn't respond to a message or didn't look at a message and it turned out that it was something life altering or life threatening or critical like that. It just doesn't typically happen. So do yourself a favor, set a specific time and just turn off your notices. If you have an exchange at 5 p.m., okay, you might want to check your message around 2 or 3 p.m. just to make sure there's no issue with the exchange or there hasn't been a hiccup or whatever. Let's say that you do miss it. Okay, well, then you can just say, hey, didn't get the message. Like, again, it's usually not life altering. You do always need to adhere to any court orders, though, that you have around how often you have to check the messages, the timing of everything. If there's specific times of day, you do need to adhere to that. Okay, so always obey the court order regardless of whatever other tips and tricks I'm giving you. Okay, the second thing that we want to do, which kind of goes hand in hand with this, is you want to respond only when necessary or when there's actually a question. Now, again, a lot of times a court will implement something like, oh, the person has to respond. You have to respond to each other within 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever timeline they put on it. They don't always do that. They will sometimes do that if one parent is complaining about the other parent's lack of response. So again, if you're under some kind of order like that, make sure that you're complying with that always. And, if you're not sure, go back and read your orders. It's helpful to go back and read your orders once in a while just to make sure that you remember the details that are in there. But when you do respond, regardless of the timing, you want to make sure that you are only responding to questions. Like, I literally will have clients skim it and look for an actual question mark in there, and make sure that you are only responding with what's necessary. So if they're just attacking you and complaining and saying how horrible you are at this thing or that thing, you just don't respond to any of that. Okay. And a lot of times clients fear, oh, well, if I don't respond, does that mean I'm agreeing? No, it doesn't mean you're agreeing. And if the court has in there that you have to respond to something and you open a message and there isn't a question in there and it's all attacking, or it's just an information thing like, I'll be at the drop off at 5 p.m. tonight, you can just respond with received or thank you or whatever like that. You don't need to go into a lot of detail. A lot of times I'll be at the pickup at 5 p.m. is laced in between all of these attacks of what a horrible parent you are and all that kind of thing. You don't want to respond to any of those. You just say received, or you say thank you or something along those lines to where they at least know you got the message. You've shown that you're responding to it like the court order says that you need to, but you're not engaging in the attacks and, the negative aspects of the message. Okay. You also want to keep your responses minimal. Like I said, that's kind of the third piece of this. All of these kind of bleed into the other, right? So you want to respond in your own timeline, not be dictated by their, attempts to trigger you or their timing or when they send it. Then you want to go through and make sure that you're only responding to what's necessary and what is a question. And then you want to be minimal and non-emotional in your responses. Okay. You also want to be kind. I think that's an important aspect of it. And when I say kind, I don't mean like fake kind or overly kind. I see a lot of people that'll like at the end of the message say, "Have a great day. Hope you enjoy your weekend," or whatever the thing is. And honestly, that's too much. Like, we all know it's a contentious relationship at best, right? And so you don't want to be trying to be fake or for the court to interpret that as you being sarcastic or even the fact that it might inflame the other person. Like, part of what you want to do if you're trying to reduce your own anxiety is to calm that other person down too. So when we're being sort of fake or overly nice or whatever, it's almost like too much togetherness, too much kindness, right? And then that can trigger them to kind of, have a little uptick in their attacks or their whatever, or they'll come back and be super nicely sarcastic or whatever. And so it just kind of gets you into more of a cycle. So there's a balance. Like, you want to be kind, but you want to be firm. You definitely don't want to be being nasty or name calling or any of those things, but also don't be overly kind. There is that balance there. And when you can sort of strike that balance and figure out where that's at, and you're responding on your own timeline and you're not engaging in the negative aspects of it, honestly, within just a week or two, you will notice a significant reduction in your own anxiety if you can effectively implement these. Now, look, I know that sometimes you can think you can implement them, and a lot of people can't without support. It's not uncommon for clients to send me a draft of a message that they want to send to the other person. And overall, it's pretty good, but there's usually at least 1 to 2 changes that I make that are meant to calm the situation down, which reduces everybody's anxiety across the board. So if you'd like some help in learning what those points are, how to kind of do this better, adjust your messages and get your own anxiety down, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There is information on that page on my group coaching programs for moms and for dads. And if you're interested in my premium one-on-one coaching services, there is a link on that page where you can also book a call to learn more about those. Okay. So thanks for joining me. I hope it's been helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.